The day was dawning and the village was abuzz. Residents of all ages came out of their homes carrying flags and flowers to decorate the streets and the inside of the church. The church bell rang out, summoning everyone to the preparations. In the houses, families cooked traditional dishes, which would be offered to both visitors and the patron saint. In the center of the church, Father Fernando prayed silently. Dressed in his modest, weathered cassock, he gazed at the altar, where an ancient sculpted image of the patron saint rested, conveying peace and reverence. He knelt down and murmured a prayer. "May this day bring light, peace, and health to our hearts," says the priest, with a glimmer of hope in his eyes. As the hours passed, the faithful entered and left the church, adjusting every detail for the procession that would soon begin. The air was filled with incense, flowers, and devout murmurs. Fernando watched, wrapped in the serenity of his mission. He knew each of the villagers, their stories, their pain, and he dedicated himself to praying for everyone, asking for protection for the community. The afternoon heat was taking hold of the village. The celebrations were already underway and the church was packed with worshipers. The windows were open, allowing a light breeze to enter and soften the heat. In the middle of the homily, in which Father Fernando was talking about faith and miracles, something interrupted the ceremony. A faint, distant bark was heard. Gradually, the faithful began to turn around to see where the sound was coming from. The church doors were open, and suddenly a staggering and visibly injured dog entered, panting and frightened. His fur was dirty and in some places stained with dried blood. He could barely walk, but his eyes expressed a desperation that immediately caught everyone's attention. Father Fernando interrupted his words and looked at the animal with compassion. The dog, as if guided by a greater force, walked slowly to the altar, stopping at the priest's feet. A heavy silence overtook the church, and everyone watched the scene, not knowing how to react. "My God," murmurs a lady in the front row, holding her grandson's hand. The priest bent down, carefully touched the dog, and realized how serious the injuries were. Without a second thought, he turns to the congregation. "This animal has come to us for help. May our patron saint guide us to do what is right." He runs his hand gently over the dog's head, trying to calm it down. "Can someone bring some water and a clean cloth? We need to help him," the priest asks firmly. Some villagers immediately mobilize, while others still watch in silence, moved by the scene. Father Fernando, holding the dog, murmurs a prayer while he waits for them to bring the necessary first aid. In the air, the feeling of something mysterious and sacred hangs over everyone. The small church, previously immersed in the routine of the celebrations, was now dominated by a silent restlessness. The candles flickered, casting shadows on the walls while Father Fernando welcomed the injured dog with an almost paternal gentleness. A young man ran up to the altar with a basin of water and some clean cloths, handing them to the priest. Father Fernando knelt down beside the dog and carefully began to clean its wounds, the damp cloth gliding gently over the animal's bruised fur. The dog lets out a slight yelp of pain, but remains still, as if it knew it was in good hands. With each careful touch, the villagers watch in amazement at the priest's serenity and dedication. "I wonder what happened to him," murmurs one of the women standing by the door. "Maybe he got lost or was attacked, but he ended up here. It's almost like a sign," says a gentleman with a hoarse voice, with an air of mystery. The priest looks at the dog with an expression of deep compassion. In a move that surprises everyone, he murmurs to the animal, "We're going to take care of you, friend. Today you're an honored guest at our feast," says Fernando, with a slight smile, as he puts his hand on the dog's head. As the minutes pass, a few villagers approach, offering their help. Some bring pieces of bread, others ask if the animal is badly hurt. The priest's compassion awakens something special in the villagers, who begin to get more involved. Little by little, they begin to talk about the dog, exchanging guesses and stories. "This dog doesn't seem strange to me," comments a man who arrived a few minutes ago, observing the dog carefully. I've seen him before, near the road that leads to Andre's house. He had a dog like that, remember? A dog that followed him everywhere. The mention of Andre's name provokes a reaction in the small crowd. Andre was known for his friendliness, always helping others, but he had been missing for a few days. No one knew what had happened, and the disappearance was beginning to cause concern. "Do you think this is Andre's dog?" asks a wide-eyed woman in a fearful whisper. "It's very likely. They say that a dog always comes back for help when its owner is in danger," the man replied, trying to control the worry growing in his chest. When the priest heard Andre's name, he frowned thoughtfully. He had felt Andre's absence at the last few masses, but had imagined that the man was traveling or busy with some work. Now, faced with the wounded dog that apparently belonged to him, an uneasy feeling formed in his heart. The dog, as if sensing the growing tension between the residents, lets out a soft yelp, its gaze fixed on the priest, as if begging for something other than physical help. Father Fernando felt a strange connection with the animal, as if the dog was there to guide not only him, but everyone, towards something they still didn't know. His voice serene but filled with a seriousness that captures everyone's attention. Father Fernando stands up and looks at the villagers around him. "My brothers, I believe that this animal has come to us not just for help, but to show us something. And perhaps it's a sign that we need to help our friend Andre. May God enlighten us and show us what to do." The murmur of approval grows among the villagers, who, now united by compassion and a sense of responsibility, are preparing to uncover the mystery that the dog seemed to be carrying with him. The church bells ring again, marking the beginning of the night. But no one leaves the place. The murmur that spreads among the villagers is now filled with concern and urgency. A doubt plagues everyone there. What could have happened to Andre? He was a man of few resources, but he was always there, always willing to help, and he would never fail to attend the patron saint's feast. Father Fernando, with the dog still by his side, went to the center of the church, drawing everyone's attention. "Friends, it seems that our brother Andre has been absent for a few days, and as far as we know, no one has heard from him." He pauses, observing the distressed faces of the villagers. "Does anyone among you have any information about his whereabouts?" The villagers exchange glances, but no one answers. The expression of concern is evident on everyone's face. Gradually, voices begin to rise, people recalling the last times they saw him. "He was last seen heading towards the woods about 3 days ago," says João, a close friend of Andre's, his voice muffled with fear. "They said he was taking some tools, maybe to get some firewood or fix something. But he never came back, and no one has seen him since," asks the priest, trying to understand the situation better. John shakes his head, his countenance gloomy. "He should have come back soon, but now, knowing that his dog turned up here alone and injured, I'm afraid something might have happened." The priest observes the dog beside him, now lying on the ground, as if waiting patiently, but with a look of supplication and exhaustion. Fernando feels the urgency of the situation pulsating in his chest. He then turns to the congregation and, with a firm voice, decides to act. "We need to gather those who are willing to help search for Andre. This dog is the only clue we have, and perhaps he can lead us to where his owner is. Let's trust that God will give us strength and that our patron saint will bless us in this search." The community, touched by the priest's appeal, formed small search parties. But before they leave, Father Fernando asks everyone to unite in prayer. He raises the crucifix, his voice trembling slightly with the weight of the responsibility he feels. "Let us ask God to protect our friend, wherever he may be. May our patron saint enlighten our steps, and may we bring Andre back safely. May the Lord watch over him and this animal, which has become a symbol of faith and hope in the midst of this holy feast." Moved, everyone in the church bows their heads, and silently asks for the miracle of reunion. A feeling of unity strengthens among them, as if each word of the prayer brings renewed hope. Father Fernando observes the villagers' faith and senses that, despite their fear and uncertainty, they are united in a greater purpose. At the end of the prayer, the dog, who until then had been resting next to the altar, slowly gets up, as if he understood that this was the moment to act. He looks directly at the priest, then at the church door, and barks with an energy that surprises everyone. Father Fernando interprets the dog's gesture as a sign and, full of determination, makes one last appeal to the villagers. "Friends, the dog seems ready to guide us. Let's follow him and, with faith, hope that God will lead us to Andre." The community, united and full of hope, followed the priest and the dog out of the church and into the unknown, hoping to find their missing friend and unravel the mystery that was now haunting the village. The moon was already beginning to shine in the sky, casting a pale glow over the village when the group of villagers, led by Father Fernando, headed towards the entrance to the forest. The dog, which until then had been moving slowly due to tiredness, seemed to acquire a new energy. He sniffs the ground and looks back, as if to confirm that everyone is there, before moving forward with a determination that surprises everyone. Father Fernando observes the animal's every move carefully, feeling that this behavior was more than a coincidence. He approaches the dog and, in a soft tone, murmurs, "You're trying to show us the way, aren't you? Come on, buddy, we're with you." The dog barks in response, a short, firm sound, and begins to walk faster, leading the group through the trees of the forest. The villagers, although apprehensive, are motivated by the animal's energy and the desire to find Andre. The dense forest makes the path more difficult, but no one thinks of giving up. Father Fernando, with an unshakable spirit, encourages the villagers with words of faith. "Remember, my brothers, that our mission is guided by love for our neighbor. Our friend needs us, and with God's grace, we will find him." The walk is challenging. The terrain becomes uneven, and the trees, getting taller and taller, cast shadows that make the environment dark and frightening. At times, the dog stops, sniffs the ground, and moves off in unexpected directions, as if following an invisible trail. The villagers exchange uneasy glances, but no one questions the path. Suddenly, one of the women hesitates as she steps on a slippery area and almost falls. A man supports her and she whispers in fear, "What if we find nothing? What if we're taking a risk for nothing?" Father Fernando, hearing her doubt, turns to the group and, with a serene look on his face, replies, "God is with us on this journey. We don't know what we'll find, but our faith guides us. We must trust." Encouraged by the priest's words, the villagers set off, the dog always in the lead, determined and focused, as if he knew exactly where to go. After an hour of walking, the group begins to feel the weight of tiredness, but the dog shows no signs of stopping. Finally, they reach a more isolated and difficult-to-access area, where few people usually go. The terrain is steep and covered in thorny bushes, but the dog, apparently immune to discomfort, pushes on, forcing the group to follow. "We're close. I can feel it," says the priest in an emotional whisper, observing the intensity in the dog's eyes. Suddenly, the animal stops at a point near a ravine and begins to bark insistently, its bark echoing through the silent forest. The sound sends shivers through the villagers, who are now tense but feel that the search is nearing its end. Father Fernando approaches the ravine, his heart beating fast with anticipation of what he might find. He kneels down, holding the crucifix tightly, and looks down at the place where the dog is pointing with its snout. Everyone holds their breath, hoping that what they are about to discover will bring answers, or a miracle. The moonlight illuminates the ravine with an unexpected clarity, as if even the night is collaborating with the search. Father Fernando kneels on the edge of the ravine and, with his heart racing, looks down, where the dog is pointing with its snout and barking insistently. Gradually, the villagers approach, and everyone looks around, trying to see something in the darkness. Then a faint moan breaks the silence. "Help!" A hoarse, weak voice calls out from somewhere below. "It's Andre!" exclaims João, recognizing his friend's voice. Father Fernando immediately turns to the villagers, an expression of urgency on his face. "Quick, we need to get down and get him out. Get the ropes," he instructs, while the dog watches attentively, as if understanding the importance of each action. Two men take the ropes they had brought just in case and start tying them to a nearby tree. Carefully, the priest climbs down first, guided only by the strength of his faith and the hope of saving his friend. As he climbs down the ravine, Andre's image becomes clearer. He is leaning against a rock, his face pale and his body covered in scratches. His clothes are dirty and torn, and his gaze seems lost, but the presence of his friends brings a gleam of relief to his eyes. "Father, I thought I wouldn't survive," Andre murmurs, his voice almost a whisper. Father Fernando holds the man's hand tightly, moved. "We're here now, Andre. God hasn't abandoned you, and neither have we." As other villagers come down to help, the dog approaches and licks its owner's face, who smiles faintly, touching the animal's head. "You saved me, didn't you, buddy?" Andre says with a broken voice, while the dog remains by his side like a tireless guardian. With effort and unity, the villagers manage to tie Andre securely and carefully pull him up the ravine. Once at the top, he is laid down on a blanket and quickly given food and water. The look on each villager's face expresses a mixture of relief and admiration at what they have just witnessed. "This dog," begins one of the women with tears in her eyes. "He led us here. Without him, we would never have found Andre." Father Fernando, still kneeling next to Andre, raised his eyes to the crowd and with a firm voice full of emotion said, "Today, we have seen something beyond our comprehension. On our holy feast day, this dog, guided by love and faith, has brought a true miracle to our community. May this night be remembered not only as a rescue, but as a symbol that God never abandons us, even in the most difficult times." The villagers agree with words of thanks, and some of them begin to cry, touched by the depth of that moment. Andre, still weak, can only whisper words of gratitude as he is enveloped by the affection of everyone around him. With care, the villagers prepare a makeshift structure to transport Andre back to the village. The dog, now recognized as the hero of the night, walks alongside his owner with the same look of devotion. And with every step, the community feels more united and grateful, as if that rescue was a divine sign that, even on the darkest nights, there is always a light to guide us back home. Back in the village, the villagers carefully carry Andre to the nearest house, where they quickly improvise a bed. While he rests, the people take turns looking after him, offering water, food, and above all, company. The dog, always by his side, seems to guard his owner, sitting at the foot of the bed and observing any movement around him. Father Fernando approaches and takes Andre's hand, who is now able to open his eyes more often, although his voice is still weak. "We are here with you, my friend. The whole village is praying for your recovery," says the priest, with a look of compassion. Andre tries to smile, but his weakness is still visible. He strokes the dog, who remains unfazed, as if he understands the importance of the moment. "Thank you, all of you," he murmurs, his voice still hoarse. "This dog, he never abandoned me. When I had given up hope, he set off in search of help, as if he knew what to do." Some villagers, moved by Andre's gratitude, exchanged glances between tears and smiles. For them, the dog was no longer just an animal. He was a messenger of hope, a sign that even miracles can come from where you least expect them. A few days later, on the following Sunday, Father Fernando prepared for a special Mass. News of the rescue had already spread through the neighboring villages, and the church was packed. People who had heard about the story traveled from afar, curious and moved by what they considered a true miracle. Andre, still recovering, was there, sitting in the front row with his dog faithfully by his side. When Mass begins, Father Fernando goes up to the altar and observes the congregation. He takes a deep breath and, with a voice full of emotion, begins his sermon. "My brothers and sisters, this past week we have witnessed a miracle. On our holy feast, when we were celebrating our patron saint, God sent us a sign. A dog, which many might have ignored or treated as just another animal, was able to guide us to our brother Andrew, who was on the brink of despair and death." The faithful listened in silence, some discreetly wiping away the tears that flowed from their eyes. "This dog taught us about faith, hope, and the importance of taking care of each other. He didn't give up on his owner, and even though he was injured, he found the strength to seek help. We are often tempted to doubt, to think that we are alone in our battles, but God works in unexpected ways. He teaches us that even the humblest of his children can bring a message of love and salvation." Andrew lowers his head, moved, while the dog, as if sensing the sacred atmosphere, remains lying down, eyes closed, almost in a state of peace. The priest turns to the image of the patron saint and concludes, "May this dog be remembered as a symbol of faith and hope. May we learn from him, and whenever we are in difficulty, remember that we are never alone. That help can come from where we least expect it, and that God's goodness is revealed in every gesture of love and compassion." At the end of the sermon, the whole church erupted into warm applause. The community, inspired by the miracle, feels renewed in their faith. The dog, now considered by all to be a true hero, is welcomed with affection and respect. The whole village sees him as a gift from the patron saint, a spiritual guide who will always be among them, reminding them of the importance of believing in the impossible. After the sermon, the villagers meet and decide that the dog should be taken in by the community. With Father Fernando's approval, the animal starts living in the church, where everyone sees it as a symbol of faith and protection. The residents make a point of looking after him, offering him food and affection, and many call him the guardian of the village. Over time, the story of the heroic dog spreads. He becomes a living legend among the neighboring villages, a symbol of divine goodness and the importance of never losing hope. At every patron saint celebration, the priest recalls the miracle of that day, reinforcing that faith and love can save us in the darkest moments. And so the dog remains in the village, not just as the animal that saved its owner, but as a true emblem of miracles, a reminder that, with faith, anything is possible.